So welcome. Thanks so much for coming. It's great to be in a co-op here in Berkeley. I've been giving talks around the Bay Area this week, and this is my last one. I leave on the train home tomorrow, so it's great to see so many people out to hear about what we're doing at Dancing Rabbit. And so I'm going to talk about a few things tonight. I'm going to talk about community, I'm going to talk about sustainability, and I'm happy to answer questions, but I'll probably try and keep it only to a few questions during things, and then there'll be plenty of time at the end to ask questions. And I just want to be able to get through it in a smooth way because with this many people it could take forever if we launch right into questions from the beginning. So Dancing Rabbit EcoVillage, and the first question that people ask is, so what does the word EcoVillage mean? And for me, EcoVillage means any place where people have gathered together to live more sustainably. And that could be anywhere in the world. It could be in a suburban area. Here's a picture from EcoVillage at Ithaca in upstate New York, and they bought land that was going to be developed into suburban, sort of random suburbia, and they clustered their homes very close together to leave most of the land undeveloped or as agriculture. And so they actually have a community-supported agriculture on site, and they've got 3 little co-housing neighborhoods all in one little eco-village right outside of Ithaca. Or Los Angeles EcoVillage. Here in downtown Los Angeles, they've bought a couple apartment buildings, and they're starting to buy more stuff in the neighborhood, and they're adding renewable energy. They're connecting with their neighbors. They're reclaiming their street. They're creating community right there in the heart of Los Angeles. Or here in Portugal, this is Tamera, a really vibrant community that's doing a lot of great experiments with solar technology. Or in Mexico, here's Huehuecoyotl, a community of artists that's also focused on sustainable living near Mexico City. It's a really great place if you ever get a chance to visit there. So really all over the world, all different habitats, all different niches, urban, rural. It's really great. We're located, it's a little bright, you can't quite see it, but Missouri. Imagine Missouri there. So we're in Northeast Missouri, and we moved from California to Missouri because we wanted to build this whole eco-village, and we found that the zoning and the building codes in Missouri were really restrictive, and so we wanted to find a place where we could be a living laboratory, where we could experiment and have a lot of freedom to do that. And so we ended up buying a farm in Northeast Missouri. We bought 280 acres 15 years ago. We paid $190,000, which we borrowed from friends and family, and we just recently paid off the mortgage, so now we own the land free and clear, which is very exciting. 280 acres. Yeah, most of what you see in this photo, and now actually 5 years ago, some friends bought the 80 acres that's not part of our land and have started a second community right next door. And so in those 15 years, we've been restoring native prairie grasses. We've been we planted 13,000 trees to expand our woodland, to protect the riparian buffer zones around our creek, to restore it to the pre-colonial, what the land would have been before it was farmed, and it was farmed pretty hard, the land that we're on. But the most interesting thing we're doing really is creating this village. And so in the southeast corner of our land, over on the lower right, we've taken what was an old farm. There was no housing there. There were a few old farm buildings, and we've started building a village. And so there's 35 houses that we built over 15 years. We now have 70 people living together. Our goal is to actually be a village of 500, which is still a long-term goal, but we've been growing. I guess we doubled in the last 4 years. So if someone wants to do the math on that, we might be 500, and it really won't be that long. It's a little bit scary for us there to think about how quickly that might happen, but it's also very exciting. And so we bought the land as a land trust, and we own it in common. It's held in trust by a nonprofit, and then each individual or family leases land from that nonprofit, and they own any improvements that they make to their land. And so it's all densely clustered, so people's lots are very small. They're an eighth of an acre or a 16th of an acre or maybe a quarter of an acre at most, unless they're doing a specific larger scale agricultural project. So there is someone who's got an acre out here where they're doing a vineyard, or there's other large agriculture spaces that we're going to be leasing out there. But each individual or family is responsible for their own income, so it's cooperative, but it's not communal in that sense. So sometimes we'll use the term out on the commune, but we're not really a commune in the technical sense of the word. And so those buildings, most of what we've been building over these last 15 years has been natural building. We do a lot of straw bale building, a lot of cob building, which is a material made of clay, sand, and straw. Trying to find natural materials, low embodied energy that can still produce houses that are efficient, affordable, easy to maintain, and easy to heat and cool over the years, and also beautiful. You can see with with cob buildings, you're sculpting your own home as you build it. You're taking this material, sort of like adobe, but you apply it wet to the building. So rather than bricks, you're actually just like sculpting your home, and it allows you to create niches and mosaics. And in this case, they've got a green living roof on the building. It's really a nice little cabin for them. We do a lot of natural plasters for our buildings, and even earthen floors. So rather than using concrete, which I guess I've been told cement, I looked this up once, cement creates 10% of the excess CO2 that humans are creating, just goes into creation of cement for roads, for buildings, etc. And so this is an alternative that really reduces, to using just a natural material. We dig the clay up from the foundation of our building and we keep it in a pile, and then you build a building and then you bring it back in and make your floor. And it's really can be very beautiful. This is the house I live in. It's a house called Sky House. It's a 6-bedroom cooperative house, and this is our sitting room, great room where we gather. And again, when you're doing your own home, you can do all these little niches and mosaics and. Oops, can you shift that back just a little bit? Is that better? Good enough. Close enough. Yep. So one of our covenants, we have 6 ecological covenants that we've all agreed to, and one of them is that all of the wood that we use in our construction has to be reclaimed or locally harvested. And here's actually an example of both, where there was a prairie restoration, a couple counties over, and they were taking down these cedar trees, and we were actually able to gather that wood and clean it up and use it to create the framework for this kitchen. And that basically, we're trying not to contribute to deforestation, to clear cutting in the Pacific Northwest or anywhere else in the world. And so we do, and by having it be local wood, reclaimed is obviously the best, but when it's local wood, we can talk to the people and find out where it's coming from and see what kind of practices they're doing. And we also reuse other materials. This is, we call this Urbanite. It's broken up concrete from town. It's an old sidewalk, or we've even one time got the old runway from the airport. And so so we use that to make foundations and do paving stones. It's a great material, and you probably have an abundance of it somewhere within 50 miles of here. There's a pile of it bigger than you can imagine. Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, and this is our new dance and movement space. So this is where we have dance class, yoga class, men's group, women's group. There's all these different things that we do in this space, and it's all, we built this ourselves. This is all from locally harvested wood. We have a friend who can take the local hickory and walnut and turn it into tongue and groove flooring and help us create this space. So natural building can be really beautiful and very practical. One of the things that we've done with our housing is that we've arranged things to create community by the way that our buildings relate to each other. So everything within our village is pedestrian scale. We have a parking lot at the entrance, and once you're beyond that, unless you're delivering a whole truckload of something or you're an emergency vehicle, it's just footpaths and bicycles. And we try and make these spaces where all the paths lead together. On the right is our common house that we all share, and so we created it with this courtyard so that it's a space where people can join together, where people's day-to-day activities cause them to interact. And so rather than in the suburbs where everything is designed around automobiles and you can drive your car all the way into your home and never interact with one of your neighbors, we have front porches. We sit on them. We talk to our neighbors as they walk by. We have those casual encounters that create community just by the way that you've arranged your houses and arranged your infrastructure. And we try to build small. We have a range. Each family and house, is different, but on average, our housing per capita is the same level that it was in this country in 1950. But in the last 60 years, houses have gotten larger, families have gotten smaller, and we now have 3 times as much space per person as we did 60 years ago. And so by having smaller homes, that's less energy that goes into construction and much less energy that goes into heating and cooling. And so that's a big step just there in limiting our impact. and creating community. I mean, in some ways, the cooperation is what allows us to do this and still have a sense of abundance in our lives because we share spaces. I might live in a small home, but I have access to the common space, and so I feel rich, and there's a space where I can do yoga and a space where I can have a party, and I don't need to have all of those in my own home the way that people sometimes feel like they need to in the wider world. And all of our energy comes from renewables. We, from the beginning, committed to being 100% renewable, and we were off-grid for 15 years. Each house or cluster of houses had its own system, had a battery bank that could store energy for the nighttime. And then it was just in the last 18 months that we made a decision to actually connect to the grid so that we could do net metering with our local utility. We installed a large solar array, and it's powering 15 different buildings at our community now, and will power others as people move and grow and we build new buildings. And we'll also power our new electric car that we're getting in the next month. We're going to get a Nissan Leaf, and that will sort of shift our fleet, towards a more sustainable fueling option. So our net metering agreement, people often talk about being net zero, which means that you're importing and exporting the same amount of energy. We've actually made a commitment to export twice as much energy as we import, because we want to make sure that we're accounting for all of the impacts that we might be having by using the wider grid as sort of a giant battery bank. And so all the transmission lines and transmission losses, all of the the power plants, and the fact that sometimes it's coal energy and sometimes it's natural gas energy. So and we've been doing that right now. I mean, we're still growing into the system, so we've actually been exporting 5 times as much as we've been using, but that's our commitment as a group, is to always export twice as much as we're importing. And we do that with both solar and wind power. We've got 40 kilowatts of solar on farm, we've got 8 kilowatts of wind, but the key to making that work is conservation, and that's really one of the things we've learned in our work there, is that before you try and replace with some alternative technology, you really need to conserve first. If we just try to replace the current American lifestyle and swap in biofuels or swap in renewable energy, there's going to be a problem with that. You're going to get new unintended consequences. There's just not the resources to really sustain, in my opinion, the lifestyle that is sort of the average American lifestyle. And so we've cut our electricity use by 90% compared to that average American lifestyle, and that's through conservation measures. I mean, compact fluorescent light bulbs and laptop computers and clotheslines instead of dryers, all of those kinds of things, and just being really conscious of turning off the lights and not wasting power. And once we've done that, it becomes very easy and affordable to actually supply that power through renewables in a way that when you're looking at that much energy, it's it's pretty expensive to just take a average American house and convert it all to solar, unless you take that step first to conserve. When it comes to transportation, our goal is to really primarily focus on biking and walking. I mean, that's certainly what we do within the community, but when we have to get further away, we don't really have access to public transit where we are. It's 3 miles to the nearest town, and that town has a population of 100. It's 12 miles to our county seat, where the population is 2,000. So we live in a rural area, and when we want to go to the doctor, we need to drive. And so we've got a covenant that says no personal motorized vehicles. And so for the 70 of us that live in our community, we share 3 cars, and we do that through sort of a radical level of car sharing. We have an online system where when you're going to go to town, you sign out a vehicle and you say when you're going to go and when you're going to come back, and then someone else jumps on, and I made a doctor's appointment, now you make a dentist appointment, and then, well, you want to go to the hardware store, of course you can come, jump on in. You almost never go somewhere by yourself. And the car co-op charges per mile. We charge 60 cents per mile for our passenger cars and 75 cents a mile for our pickup truck. And so there's a financial incentive to share those vehicles, because then you divide that by whoever's in the car. So if you go by yourself, it can be a little bit expensive, but if you actually get the car full, it's actually very cheap. And the average person at Dancing Rabbit ends up only driving, when you total up all the miles and divide it by the number of people, we only drive 75 miles per month per person, which again is less than 10% of what the average American drives. And one of the keys to that is that we're able to do most of our work from home. There's no one who is commuting on a daily basis, and I'll get to a minute where people make their money. When it comes to water, water is life, and so it's essential, no matter where you are. And for us, water does not come out of the ground. We don't have good wells in our areas. It's not really suitable, the soil type. So we do all rainwater catchment. And so all of our, hey, come join us. All of our houses that have plumbing have some sort of buried cistern underground where we can collect rainwater. And so you can see on this building, you can sort of see the guttering system that brings water down into an underground cistern. And we're able to store that water, filter it, treat, so that it's ready for all of our domestic uses: cooking, cleaning, showering, laundry, and potable uses. And that's all from the rainwater that comes off of our roofs. And then we treat our wastewater in a constructed wetland. And so in the foreground here, this reed bed is something that we created, where we created a gravel bed and planted wetland plants, and our gray water travels through there and is treated, and then by the end it's clean enough that we can use it to irrigate fruit trees, to irrigate certain garden plants, or just release it into the environment. And that puts us as part of the hydrologic cycle, rather than taking water out of aquifers or storing it in enormous lakes for many years. We're dealing with the water that falls on our roofs. We catch it, we use it, we release it back into the environment, and again, we do that by using a lot less water. And so we've reduced our water use to 12 gallons of water per person per day. And the main thing that we've done that's different than the average American is we don't have flush toilets. All of our toilets are composting toilets. They don't use any water. They produce nutrients that we can, again, go back to the fruit trees and, or certain gardens. And we also make sure that there's no leaks in our plumbing. I've read that 40% of the water in the average house goes to flush toilets, and another 30% goes to leaky faucets and leaky plumbing. And so just by eliminating that, we're 70% of the way there in terms of reducing our water usage. And when the buildings that we build, we try and design them with passive solar design in mind. So here's an example of a small home that a couple built when they first moved to Dancing Rabbit. They've since added on to it as their child has grown. But the greenhouse that you see there, on a sunny day, that can warm the entire house. They open up windows between the greenhouse and the rest of the house, and that heats the whole house. And so it's 0 degree Fahrenheit outside, and their house is warm just from the solar gain into that greenhouse. Now they do sometimes have to light a fire at night to keep it warm, but it's remarkable what you can do with passive solar to really reduce how much heating you need in your home. And it's really a simple matter of orienting your house towards the south, putting in some sort of large windows or a greenhouse, and making sure that you have an overhang that allows the sun to penetrate into the house during the winter when you want heat, and then an overhang that prevents the sun from entering during the summer to keep it cool. And you'll see that if you look at all the buildings, in some of the pictures, you'll notice, large southern facing windows, the same side that the solar panels are on. When it does come to heating our homes, we heat with wood. It's not something that I would necessarily recommend for every urban household because of air quality issues, and we're even looking long term to switch to heat pumps and solar renewable energy to heat our homes. But the wood that we're burning all comes from waste from local industry. We have a furniture maker in our county as well as a pallet maker, and we're able to take the waste wood from their industry and we burn that for heating our homes. And what you see here is a wood-fired boiler, and so that actually heats the hot water both to circulate through radiant floor tubing as well as the domestic hot water in our home. And it's very efficient. This is a European model that's a gasifying model, so it's as efficient as possible in terms of getting heat out of the wood, and also it minimizes the emissions from the wood.
Is this just Sky House or?
This is in Sky House, but we have a similar one in the Common House. Other houses might have just smaller homes might just have a more traditional wood stove, but again, we're always looking for the most efficient models and the lowest emissions that we can find. We do some cooking on wood as well. Cooking is really one of the few places where we still use fossil fuels, and I'm actually really excited with our new electricity microgrid for the community. We're experimenting with fully electric cooking, which means that we can cook fully on solar, not just we do use solar cookers, a big box cooker with mirrors and insulated box to cook when it's summertime, but with an electric cooker we can still be using the solar electricity to cook with. We do some with wood, some with electricity, and some with gas, but we don't really heat with gas or heat hot water. And so when it comes down to it, we end up using only about 10% of the natural gas that the average American uses. Again, keeping that to a small fraction of the impact. And with food, we're part of the local food movement, trying to create more and more of our own food on site, locally within our county. I recently saw a statistic in the New York Times where they're talking about lawns and how much of our land in this country goes to front lawns and backyards. And if we took a third of the lawns in America and turned them into gardens, we could grow all the vegetables that are needed for the people in this country. And so that's basically what we're doing in our community, is we're taking all the spaces between buildings and making those productive. Fruit trees, gardens, obviously some spaces for social stuff and recreation and storage, but really trying to produce a lot of our own food on site. And at this point, we probably produce more than half of our food by weight on site or within a few miles, because we have neighbors who also grow vegetables for us. But when it comes to calories, we're not really there yet. A lot of our calories we're still importing, and we're buying everything in bulk. So we're buying 50-pound bags of rice or wheat, or and as much as we can from local farmers, but we do still get some of it shipped from a little farther away. And we have it's great to see organics taking off in our area. We have a few Mennonite families who run organic farms and gardens, and we buy from them. We have an organic dairy a mile down the road where we can get dairy products. And people do have some animal agriculture in our community, chickens, and we had sheep this last year, but it really, so people's diet is up to them. This is, we have a CSA on site. We have someone who basically grows vegetables and sells them to other people within the community, and here's his greenhouse, and this is, winter time when, it's 0 degrees outside, and if you, plan ahead, you can have greens all through the winter in a hoop house, in an unheated hoop house. It's pretty remarkable what you can do with that. We do shiitake mushroom logs. It's a really great way to generate food that's not quite wild food, but you basically inoculate these logs. You put them in the woods, and after a big rain in the warm season, you go out and there's 10, 15 pounds of shiitakes for you to eat, and it's like just like, wow, there's like $200 worth of mushrooms right here. This is great. So it's pretty cool. And we do a lot of preserving. So not only are we eating our own vegetables in the summer, but this is for my food co-op. There's 8 of us who cook and eat together, and this is a winter's bounty. And so we take, from during the summer when we're harvesting, we're preserving, tomato sauce and pickles and green beans, and we're making our own kimchi and sauerkraut, and we're dehydrating kale, and we're so it's fermenting, it's pickling, it's canning, it's freezing, all of those different techniques to try and preserve our food. And then it's so amazing to be able to take that jar off the shelf in the winter and know that this came from your garden and that you had your hand in making that applesauce or that tomato sauce. And it really is so rewarding to relocalize your food and to have to know where it comes from, and to just have that memory of like, I remember canning this in August. It's really great for us. And we now have a retail restaurant on site, and so we have a bed and breakfast that has a cafe, and it has a little pub or a bar, and they do pizza night once a week, and people actually gather together there for and buy pizza. So it's like your night out when you can actually go to the restaurant in town and get a beer and all that. And so it's pretty fun. I mean, most people actually eat in some sort of cooperative situation. So the group of 70 does not all eat together in one common kitchen. Instead, it's more like there's 8 people who eat here, and then there's 15 who are part of this co-op, and maybe 5 or 6 over there. And then some people do eat on their own or in their own private homes. And then we do come together as a whole group twice a week for potlucks, and that's really great to have that chance where the whole community can get together. And we even invite our neighboring communities. So in the summer, that can mean over 100 people for a potluck, once a week. It's pretty exciting.
Do people come to the pub from all around the community, or around or just in?
Yeah, come on in. It's a mix. I mean, we do get people from off farm who come and come to pizza night or come to the bar. We're the only place with a liquor license within 15 miles. So during hunting season, actually hunters come and check out our community scene. So I'd say almost every week there's someone from outside the community, but I'd say it's mostly community members who are there. But it's a great way for us to connect with people. I mean, we have good relationships with our neighbors. They're interested in what we're doing. I mean, it's different. It's not what they're doing with their lives. I mean, we have a pretty different culture. But the sheriff was just over for dinner the other night, and the county commissioner, and when we first moved there, one of the secrets was that we were the only ones in the county who knew how to fix a computer. And so suddenly we were everyone's friends, and like doing the website for the local newspaper and the local chamber of commerce, and so that's instant respect to your local community. I recommend it to fix your neighbors' computers. They love it. So economics at Dancing Rabbit works on a variety of different levels. We have a very strong gift economy in the cooperative sense of just like you need some extra help moving something or in your garden today or something, and you just like invite your neighbors over. They come and help because they know that you're going to come and help them, and you don't track that. It's not a barter system. It's just like you're neighborly. You help each other, and there's some of the level of like you'd give your shirt off your back to your neighbor because they do the same for you. But we also have a sort of normal economy in the sense of we have, we buy vegetables from each other and we pay someone to build a building, those kinds of things. And we actually have an alternative currency that we use for most of our exchanges within the village. We do still use US dollars, but I'd say primarily when people are exchanging goods and services within the community, it goes through what we call our ELM system for exchange local money. And we have both a paper currency, although that rarely gets used. We primarily use this online system that's sort of like PayPal, except there's no fees. It's very simple, and it's a great way to exchange money. So I almost never handle money. No one goes around with their wallet, and no one, never even actually talk about, dollars. It's, how many elms does that cost? And, can I pay you in elms? It's really great. Now, it still counts as money. The IRS still wants their taxes, and you can exchange it one for one with US dollars. And what it does for us, as well as just facilitating exchange and promoting a local economy, it creates the equivalent of like a local credit union. And so we have $40,000 or $50,000 in the system that we can loan to projects within our village. And so when the car co-op wants to buy the electric car, we're loaning $12,000 from with 0% interest from this ELM system that goes to the car co-op to buy that. And so basically, instead of our money being in Wall Street, our money is in our own hands, and we can decide what to loan it for and what to invest it in.